These golf psychology sessions with a PGA Tour golf psychologist who's worked with 6 major champions will improve your golf and lower your handicap. Right, today can we talk about the big competition day? So we've seen it before, it's the club championship, it's the marquee club competition for the amateur golfer. He's been working himself up for 3 or 4 weeks. He gets there in a heightened state of anxiousness and nervousness and excitement, and invariably a lot of the time it ends up in disappointment because they've got themselves so hyped up. So I'm delighted to say that the Scratch at 50 psychology channel has partnered with Caddy. Caddy is an app that gives you access to one of the world's leading golf psychology coaches who's worked with 6 major champions and hundreds of PGA Tour, DP World Tour players from all over the world. Watch this video to the end where you can get a special offer to get access to Caddy today.
The key thing with it, Craig, is to understand what your brain's up to.
Right.
Because fundamentally our brain, a deep level, thinking, from when we were roaming around in caves, going way back, our brain's not really that bothered about whether you play good or bad golf. The main function of our brain is to protect you.
Okay.
Right, now when it's trying to protect you, going back to those cave days, if you were ostracized from the group, if you didn't fit in with that group, that meant one thing, which was death.
Right.
So as daft as this sounds, that's exactly what the brain's doing in that situation.
Yeah,
It's perceiving a really dangerous situation where you might make a fool of yourself, and then you think what the brain does. If you're in a, if you're in a genuine situation of danger, there's 3 options. You either fight what's coming at you, you freeze, or you run away.
Yeah.
Neither of those 3 are useful for golf. So it's a double bind, and I've got all these sensations going on in my body, and my brain's screaming at me, protect, protect, protect. So how do we fix that? Is number 1, is as daft as it sounds, is just recognize what your brain's up to.
Right.
Your brain is doing its best to protect you. And it's kind of like almost talking to your brain and saying, look, I'm okay here. I can deal with this. I'm not saying it's easy, this, but when you start to understand that all these feelings and sensations are this protection mechanism, then the other thing that you can do is that when you have those feelings in your body, we label that as nervousness.
Yeah.
And we see that as a bad thing, and we want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But actually, if it was reframed another way, if what you felt in your body, you called it, instead of nervousness, it was energy.
Yes.
See, if kids were taught that when they go to the first tee, currently they go to the first tee and they're taught that when they get certain feelings, it's first tee nerves.
Yeah.
And that's bad.
Yeah.
Well, what about if it was first tee energy?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, I'm amped up here.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm ready to play. And the final thing with that is that probably the most important thing. You're a good player. There'll have been times when you felt great, felt absolutely calm as anything, Buddha-like state, and still hit bad shots.
Yeah.
The other side of it, there'll have been times in your career as a golfer when you felt nervous, anxious, you felt terrible, but as you said, you still managed to hit good shots.
Yeah.
So it's making sure that you realise to yourself that how you feel any given doesn't determine the shot.
Yes. Yeah, and also the more times you put yourself in that situation, the better as well. Because I remember when I first played in the English Amateur, I was about 17 years old. It was my first national tournament, and I remember I got on the first tee. There was a guy announcing your name and your golf club and stuff, and I rushed it and snap-hooked it in the trees. I remember it distinctly. It was at Stoneham Golf Club in Southampton. It hit a tree trunk full in the face and ricocheted back into the middle of the fairway, which meant I didn't have to reload. Yeah. But then I remember when I went the next year, I'd learned from it, and I remember I just did everything in slow motion to make sure that. And then obviously I played 10, 12, 15 English amateur stroke play and stuff, and then each time I did it, it got easier each time. But you still have the nerves. The nerves don't go away.
But if we reframe those nerves as energy,
yes, that's a really good way of putting it.
Turn
it into a positive.
Turn it into a positive thing. I'll butcher this story, but it's stuck with me for years. I read once about, remember that we were of a generation where we remember Carly Simon, the singer, who had terrible stage fright.
Okay.
To the point where she didn't want to appear on stage. And I heard a story that Bruce Springsteen read about this Carly Simon issue, and she was describing all of the things that she felt before she went on stage, and apparently Springsteen looked at it and he went, my God, if I don't feel those feelings, I can't sing.
Wow. So he felt the same thing.
So he was feeling the same thing, but it was just a different frame of reference in his mind.
Yeah.
You know, and what you've also said that's so important, obviously the more you do it, the more your brain realizes it's not a real threat.
Yes.
And what you've then done is reflect. Everybody should look at it this way: put yourself in that situation and then reflect afterwards. What were my tendencies?
Yeah.
Now, generally, tendencies under pressure would be you either speed up or you slow down.
Yes.
So you get out of your natural sequence.
Yeah.
You know, I think Greg Norman in the meltdown with Faldo all those years ago in the Masters, I think his routine was timed in the first 3 days, and there was about less than 2 seconds variation in any of those routines. And then in the final round, it was anything up to 45 seconds.
Wow.
Which is enormous.
Yeah.
So even a great player like him got out of sequence.
Yeah. So what advice would you be to everyone watching this? The best way to try and deal with their biggest day that's coming? Obviously, it's easy to say just treat it like every other competition, but you can't do that, can you?
You know, this idea of people say, oh, it doesn't matter, and, you know, we'll still love you and all this. Your brain don't give a crap about all that. Your brain is perceiving threat.
Yeah.
So the fact is, instead of trying to downplay it, actually acknowledge that you will be amped up.
Yeah.
Your brain will go in full tilt, get me out of here mode.
Yeah.
If you're then prepared to say, you know what, this is important enough for me to have a go at it and face that, the very fact that you acknowledged your brain that's what it's doing, paradoxically, then it starts to calm things down.
Right.
And rather than try and resist the feelings that we get interested in them. It's almost like, wow.
Yeah.
Feel that chest pumping.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this.
Yeah. So one thing I have learned through, you know, I've obviously not got the understanding that you've got, but I think for an amateur golfer, I've got above average understanding of psychology.
Yeah.
And one thing I have learned, which I found very helpful, is that when you've got that good round going, and you invariably get the nerves near the end of the round, I always just tell myself, this is great.
Yes.
Because this is where we want to be. Whereas obviously it's very easy to let those nerves get in the way of your performance, and obviously, like you said, get out of your routine, get out of your sequencing, start rushing or slowing down or whatever.
I think a great thing I heard years ago, and it's sort of whatever we resist, we strengthen. So if we're resisting those feelings, we actually strengthen it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually go, you know, wow, this is what I'm done this for. Jack Nicklaus always used to say, give me that feeling on the back nine of a major tournament.
Yeah.
That's what I hit the practice shots for. He didn't say give me that feeling of nervousness. He said just give me that feeling. You're alive. You're actually engaged in life doing this stuff. You know, I do, maybe every year I'll do 100 presentations, different golf clubs, and, you know, across Europe and whatever. And do I feel nervous before each one? I feel sensations in my body before each one, but I don't label it as nervousness.
No.
I think, well, yeah, I've got these feelings. I'm ready to just interact now. I'm ready to do what I'm more worried now is if I don't get any of those feelings.
Yeah.
I'm a bit flat.
Yeah. No, that's that's for everyone who's watching. That changing that word from nervous to energy. That is a fantastic bit of advice, because that is just totally turning that narrative around, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it, you know, emotion, the word emotion, it's energy in motion.
Yeah.
That's what's going on in your body. It's in motion. And if we resist it, it tends to constrict.
Yeah.
If we embrace it and go, wow, that's interesting, I've got these feelings, it'll tend to eventually flow through.
Yeah. No, that is absolutely fantastic. Hope you enjoyed that episode of the Golf Psychology Sessions. If you want to get continued advice from Carl, you can subscribe to the Mind Caddy app. Go into the description of this video for a special offer as a viewer or subscriber of the Scratch at 50 Psychology channel.